Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kris. This video is sponsored by Yasin Muhammad. This is the battle of, oh my goodness, Khandaq. Why did I had it right. I said it right like 2 minutes ago. I'm trying to remember how he said it. I can't say it like he says. He says it cool. Azab Trench Confederates. So this is basically, this happened during the American Civil War. People don't know. That's not true. Oh, I got a little bit of dinner. It is what it is. So we're going to go ahead and start. Before we get started though, click on that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And then if you want to sponsor a video, I got a little thanks button down here. Click on that, donate to the channel, request a video. Your name sponsors that video. All right, I'm going to shut my face. And we're going to do the video in 716, 715, 714, 713. Hold on, I got to get a drink. I forgot where I was. 800, 799, 798. My dog's looking at me. I got sidetracked. I forgot where I was at. 900, 899. Okay.
Never before has this happened.
Let me go back before we start this.
Banner of Islam and the banner of Kufr. Never before has this happened. Before this time, the Arabs have been a disparate people, a tribal people. Maximum 2 tribes will form a temporary alliance to fight a 3rd tribe. Maximum. Never before have 10, 15 tribes all come together. Never. And now we're having a showdown, the likes of which Arabia has never seen. And this is showing us that things are changing at such a radical pace that within 10 years of the Prophet's mission and message, within 10 years, or a little bit more than 10, subhanAllah, we have probably around 15,000 people now fighting, on both sides added together. And this is a showdown between Islam and Kufr. And within 5 years after this, of course, the showdown will come to an end. Now, Abu Sufyan basically told them to meet at a preconceived, basically agreed upon place. So the Ghatafan came down, the Quraysh came up, the other tribes, they all came, and they met at a place which is mentioned in the books of Seerah. And of course, by this time now, you cannot hide this type of numbers, right? You cannot hide these types of numbers. The news has reached the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as usual, and this was his sunnah at Badr and at Uhud, and now we see it at Khandaq. This is always his sunnah. As usual, he convenes a gathering of all of the Sahaba in the masjid. And he tells them exactly the situation. And then he says, what do you think should be done? What do you think should be done? Now the books of Seerah do not mention too many options given. And in my opinion, this is because, until Salman gave his option, this is because there wasn't much of an option to give, right? Allahu A'lam, but what can you do when 10,000 people are attacking? You simply have to figure out where to fight and then fight. They really did not have much to say until finally, as we all know, Salman al-Farisi, and this was the first battle that he was able to participate in. It took a few years to free him. You remember the story of Salman al-Farisi? We went over it in a lot of detail, that at this time he's already probably 70 years old at this time. He has lived a very long life, probably even 100. I mean, at this time, we don't know. Maybe some books say he died at the age of 120. And if that is true, then when this battle is taking place, then he's probably 100 years old then. So Salman al-Farisi, we know he went through a long life. He was first a Zoroastrian, and then he became a Christian, and then after one monk, and then a second, and then a third, and then a fourth monk, and then finally that. And each time he's living 5, 10, 15 years with these monks, right? Until finally the last of these monks says, go to the land of date palms, because the Prophet is just about to come. And you will know him because, what are his signs? Who remembers? Number 1, the seal on his back. Number 2, he won't eat charity, but he'll accept gifts. And then number 3 was the land of the date palms, right? And Salman wanted to make his way to Khaybar, because that's where date palms were. By the way, Khaybar was the #1 producing dates of the entire region. more than Medina, much more than Medina, right? Khaybar was far larger than Medina. So even Salman thought Khaybar. But then Allah willed, he got taken as a slave and sent to Medina, even though he didn't intend Medina. And so eventually he came to the Prophet, and we all know the story, and he told him the whole story, and the Prophet showed him the seal and whatnot when he told him, and Salman agreed with his master to be freed for a preposterous sum, right? A preposterous sum. If you can plant, I don't know, 100 or something, I forgot now how much it was, a lot of date palms, and they grow to their full, then I'll free you. Now it's going to take 15 years to go to their full, right? How are you going to do this? So Salman came to the Prophet and told him what happened. The Prophet said, call me when the season comes. When it's time to plant, call me. And the Prophet himself went and he laid every single seedling himself. All of the numbers that needed to be laid, he did it himself, right? And obviously when he does it, what do you think is going to happen? And so within...
What do I think is going to happen? It's going to be a shortage of water, and they're just not going to grow. Probably a lot of bugs eat some of the other ones. Right? Am I spot on? I think I'm pretty accurate. Oh, no, that's right. I'm completely wrong.
In a few years, basically, much expedited process, Salman al-Farsi is freed. So he was not able to participate at Badr and Uhud because he's a slave, right? Now in Khandaq, he becomes free. And Khandaq was his first battle. He was able to participate, and he couldn't participate physically too much because he's this old, but we all know he gave them the plan. He said, back in our hometown in Iran, in Persia, back in our home, we have a tactic we used to do, and that is to dig a trench and basically use this as a means of protection against us and our enemy. And for the first time in Arabia, this idea was imported. Now, by the way, this shows us a very important point, and that is Islam, and this is historically always the case, is very open to new ideas. That when it comes to...
I think that hold on. I think that in order to be successful in anything, it can't be a one street thought process. You have to, I would have to cough, excuse me. You have to be willing to accept outside ideas, because you're not always going to have the best idea, the best plan. And if you have a willingness to include others, then people are going to see that. Because if people are giving you ideas and you're like, okay, they're all terrible. We're going to go with my plan. My plan is the first wave is going to run in and probably be murdered. And then the second wave is going to run in and probably also be murdered. And then the third wave, hopefully you're going to wear them down. You'll all be murdered too. But then the fourth wave is going to go in and maybe make a little, impact into the war, into the group. And then the fifth wave is going to come in, and the sixth wave, and the seventh wave. And by then we should overpower them. But we're going to throw in an 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And then I'll probably come in on the 38th wave. They're like, oh, cool. So you're going to stay in the very back. That's great. It's great for us, because it means we're all going to die and you're not going to. So, yeah, that's how we want it. So you got to be open. Any good military leader is open. Now, not just because you're open doesn't mean you have to accept. You can listen to everyone and say, I want to do this. And the reason why I want to do this is because I think that opens up these other ideas, and maybe they're not thinking ahead that way. So you should take advice, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they see what you are trying to see, if that makes sense.
To technology, innovation is positive. And when it comes to rituals, innovation is negative. When it comes to other ideas, right? This is not an Arab custom. They've never done it before, right? This is a custom of the Persians. But it's something that is useful and beneficial. And this really shows us the Prophet himself, and this is not the only example. There are so many examples that something that is taking place in another culture, but it's nothing to do with...
Okay, sorry about that. Had to let the dogs out. And then Had to get my food. Okay, back to the video.
Rituals or theology. You see, when it comes to aqidah, when it comes to rituals, when it comes to our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't care about how other people do it. That's we have ours, lakum dinukum waliyadin. But when it comes to living in this world, when it comes to technology, when it comes to anything to do with this dunya, we benefit from all experiences. And we don't care about where it comes from. As the process, actually, there's a difference. Is this authentic hadith or not? Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. Wisdom is the lost item of the believer. There's a controversy, is hadith authentic or not? So we'll just say it's a saying for sure of the Arabs, of the Salaf. Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. Wisdom is the lost item of the believer. He picks it up wherever he finds it. Now, by the way, this incident is something about technology. Even knowledge that is related to this dunya and not about technology, our Prophet ﷺ took it. For example, he said, I was about to prohibit you from ghila, and ghila means to have a child with your wife when she's feeding one child. So before the child is breastfed, finished, you have another child within the first 2 years. He said, I was going to prevent you from doing this. But then I saw the Romans and Persians have children one after the other, and it doesn't harm them. So go ahead and have children one after the other, basically. Right? Now, this is basically a topic of humanities or sociology or whatever, anthropology, whatever you call it, right? And our Prophet is saying, I looked at the other cultures and they don't have a problem, so go ahead and do it as well. And this clearly shows us psychology, history, whatever, all of these sciences, yallah, bismillah, take them as long as it doesn't contradict our sharia. By the way, even more, the Prophet ﷺ even adopted cultural icons or cultural things not necessary for him to adopt, simply because this was the norm of the known world. For example, the first time ever that he sent a letter to Heraclius, they said to him, O Messenger of Allah, those emperors do not accept any message from another ruler unless it has a sealed wax on it. And that's so that the ruler knows direct. No messenger has read it. This is the custom. If you are a ruler, you're a leader, you are our leader, you need to have this. So our Prophet ﷺ asked around, how does this done? So they told him, you need a special signature that is unique to you. Nobody else can imitate it, right? So that was when he ordered a ring to be made. And on it was written, Muhammad on the bottom line, Rasul on the second line, and Allah on the top line. Right? And this was done to give respect to Allah even in writing, that the name of Allah is the highest. وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا, to give respect to the name of Allah. So he took the ring, Muhammad Rasulullah, made out of silver, and he would use this ring every time he sent a letter, put it in wax and then put it in there. Now this shows us a very important point. And wallahi, this is, inshallah, none of you in this room, but wallahi, we have this attitude very prevalent in the ummah. Oh, this is the system of the kuffar, we cannot do it. This is the way of the disbeliever. And did our Prophet ﷺ say, I don't care what the kuffar do, this is the way I'm going to do things? There's a system. The world is operating by this system. Is there anything haram to have wax and seal the letter? No. Did Allah prohibit it? No. If that's the way the world is working, so be it, we also work that way. Right? And this clearly shows us the open-mindedness. Anyway, that was a complete tangent. I don't know, completely unprepared. Wasn't planned. But the point being, no problem taking from the cultures, the customs, the knowledge of others, as long as it does not explicitly contradict something that we're not allowed to do. So the Prophet ﷺ agreed to this, and he also said, right at the beginning he said, and look how far ahead he's thinking. He said, we should also gather together all of the women and children and send them to the fortress of the Banu Haritha. And this fortress, the Banu Haritha had taken this tactic from the Yahud. They had learned it from the Yahud. They had imitated a fortress. So the Banu Haritha, of course, are from the Ansar. The Banu Haritha are from the Ansar, right? And the Banu Haritha, by virtue of the fact they're living with the Yahud for centuries, so they had basically built their own fortress. And this was the largest fortress that the Ansar owned. Now, it was not built by the Yahud, so it was obviously not to that standard. They were the masters. But they had taken whatever they could, and they had an equivalent as much as they could. And this was the most protected fortress of the Ansar. And by the way, most of the Ansar did not have fortresses. Because only some of the tribes they had imitated from the Yahud. So to copy them, they had done this. So the Banu Haritha had the largest fortress. Now, the Prophet ﷺ was worried. He's already thinking so many steps ahead. And nobody told this to him. This was his own planning. The Prophet ﷺ was worried that all of the men are going to be busy manning and guarding the perimeters. And inside of Medina, there is still the tribe of the Banu Qurayza. And the Banu Qurayza, we don't know where their loyalties will lie. You see, this is why Ahzab was so sensitive. And this is why what happened to Banu Qurayza happened. That, remember, Banu Qaynuqa' has been expelled. Then the Banu Nadir has been expelled even more harshly. And now there's only one tribe left. And this tribe, even though they have taken 3 separate promises. Now again, this is the point here. Every time the Prophet gave them an option out. After the Banu Qaynuqa', well, in the beginning the contract or the Treaty of Medina, the constitution. Then after the Banu Qaynuqa', he got the contract again from Banu Nadir and from the Banu Qurayza. And they both agreed. Then after the Banu Nadir, he first, remember we talked about this, when he was expelling the Banu Nadir, on his way to the Banu Nadir, he goes to the Banu Qurayza. On his way to the Banu Nadir. And he tells them, basically, you know, are you still agreeing to the treaty that we have agreed to? Or do you want to change your minds? Do you want to still agree to this or leave peacefully? And they promised by Allah, the halaf that they gave, that they're still upon that constitution, right? So then he goes to the Banu Nadir and expels them. So now the Banu Qurayza, the last of the 3 tribes, the Banu Qurayza, Allahu A'lam what's going to happen. Because if they flip, if they turn around and become a 5th column, this is almost certain disaster unless Allah helps them. Because they're on the inside of the perimeters. So the Prophet ﷺ is automatically thinking, one of the first things he does, as soon as he gives the commandment to build the trench, he also says, send the women and children to the Banu Haritha's fortress. And that fortress, by the way, it has a name. They used to name their fortresses, their camels. You know, this was the custom. They used to name these things. And it was called Al-Fari'. Al-Fari'. And so he said, send them to Al-Fari'. And of course, the fortress, the fortress of Al-Fari', I mean, we don't have much information about it. I mean, one of the stories that we know, the famous story that when the women and children went there, Abdullah ibn Zubayr went as well, by the way. How old is Abdullah ibn Zubayr at this point in time? Quick quiz, very simple quiz. Because, exactly, he's 5 years old, right? He's 5 years old. Well, technically he's 4. Technically he's 4 years old, because he was born. Guys, we went over this. Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Yeah, but when was he born? Even more precise, we know. Right at the entry. Right at the entry. He's born at Quba. He's born at Quba. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr's birth was an optimistic birth because it gave them good news, the new life. They took it as a positive omen. And we can have positive omens in Islam. We've said this many times, right? You're allowed to have positive omens. You can't have negative omens. They took it as a positive omen. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr is around 4 or 5 years old. And he remembers. He has memories. He's a kid, right? By the way, also, Umar ibn Abi Salama was with him. Umar ibn Abi Salama is the son of Salama and Abu Salama. And so he is the quote-unquote stepson. I mean, that's the English term. By stepson, we mean the son of the Prophet's wife. Salama's son, Umar. Now, I have to pause here, go into a tangent. It's very important. It's a bit awkward tangent about the story of Hassan ibn Thabit and the fortress. It's a bit of an awkward tangent, but it is very, in my opinion, very beneficial. It's a very beneficial tangent. And this is really the only story I have about the fortress. So we'll just put it right here, even though chronologically this happens another week or later. But because the fortress is mentioned, we're just going to mention it now and then move on, and don't worry about the fortress after this, right? The issue is that the women and children were sent to the fortress, right? And it is said that 1 or 2 very elderly men who were, 70, 80 years old or blind or whatnot, basically the invalid, were sent. There was only one young man sent with them, and that is Hassan ibn Thabit. There is only one man who potentially, when I say young, relatively, I mean he wasn't 20 at the time, but you get the point. He could have been on the front lines for him from his age. He might have been maybe 40, 50 years old, Allahu Alam how old, but he would have been a man that, like all the rest of them, like Abu Bakr, they're not in their 20s or 30s either. Why? This is an area of tariq and history that frankly most of us don't hear about, and it is better we don't hear about it. But at the same time, someone like me, I don't want you to hear about it from the wrong sources, number one. Number two, I firmly believe that everything in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ has much wisdom and benefit for us. And therefore, I mention these narrations because I feel there's a lot of benefit. Now, the version of Musnad Imam Ahmad goes, and the narrator, by the way, is Abdullah ibn Zubair. And he's a child, but he's narrating when he's an adult, right? That he says in Musnad Imam Ahmad, that he says that the women and children and myself and other kids, because he's a kid now, I mean he's 5 years old, what do you expect him to do? They were put into the fortress along with Hassan, and Hassan was Jaban. And that basically means he was not brave, let's just put it politely, okay? He was not brave. And so he was not of those who could carry a weapon. He was not of those who could, it is said that when he carried a weapon he would tremble. He was not of the type to fight in a battle, right? Now, by the way, not to be very stereotypical, but subhanAllah, Allah created people differently. Generally speaking, those involved in the arts are not known for their valor and bravery, right? And Hassan was known for what? Poetry, right? Generally speaking, this is, these days they have this left brain, right brain, all of these types of things, they talk about it, right? Generally speaking, those that are involved in, the fine arts and whatever, painting or poetry or whatnot, they have a different mizaj. They have a different, way of doing things. And this is the way Allah created us.
Something that I always think of is it's just a different calling in your life. Like, we're not all meant to be billionaires. We're not all meant to be homeless. I know that's completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but some are just, it's almost like you were born to do certain things, and other people, it takes a while before you find what you kind of find your place. But yeah, it's we're all born with different talents.
So Hassan could not carry a sword. And another Sahabi says the word Javan, which is a very harsh word actually, but let him say it. We're just quote what he says. And it basically means he was not brave. You understand the point here. So he's put with the women and the children. Now, he's the only man in the fortress. Now, a week later, we're not going to talk about it in that point, but when the Quraysh are outside the city, when the Ghatafan have come, the Banu Qurayza decide to flip. Right? The Banu Qurayza, they decide to flip. And the first thing that they do, and you really need to understand this to understand what happens to them. The first thing that they do is not to attack the men. It is to figure out how to execute all of the women and children. Think about that. Then put into perspective their punishment. Right? So they send two people to Al-Fari' to see whether it's protected or not. Now the Yahud at the time, they lived in Awali, and Awali was a distance away from Al-Fari'. So they send two scouts in the middle of the night to see is it protected or not. If it's not protected, they're going to come back and then launch an offensive, and the purpose being that basically you'll demoralize and you will have the advantage and you'll allow a passage for them to come in. So they decided that they're going to send these two. Now, in the middle of the night, Safiya bint Huyay, Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, the Amma of the Prophet ﷺ, right, Abdul Muttalib's daughter. Safiya hears a noise, somebody's climbing. Somebody has a rope and he's whispering, she hears a noise. And she wakes up Hassan because he's the only man. And she says to Hassan, go out and defend us. Go out and do something. And he says, O Ammatu Rasulillah, O aunt of the Prophet ﷺ, may Allah bless and reward you. You don't humiliate me more. You know this is not my field. And you don't make it worse. You know I can't do this, right? That's why I'm here in the first place, right? And so what does she do? She takes a male shawl, like the shawl that the men wore, throws it around her so that the image, a silhouette given is she's a man. And she takes a dagger, puts it in her mouth, and climbs out of the window. I mean, this is like, literally Hollywood type of stuff we think about Allah. But this is exactly what the books of Seerah say. She takes that dagger, she climbs out of the window, and in pitch darkness she tries to find this man. Where is he climbing? There's a man climbing up and he's speaking to his companion down below. So she completely surprise attacks him, jumps on him, slits his throat, right? And that, by the way, requires force. Slits his throat, throws the head down to the companion, right? And the companion shrieks and runs away thinking that the place is guarded. So khalas, they've been saved, thinking that they've been guarded. Then she comes back in and says to Hassan, go get his armor and weapons, his cell basically, go get his armor and weapons so that we can benefit from this, And he says to her, I have no need of them. I don't need them, right? I have no need of them. Now, radiyallahu anhu, radiyallahu anhu. Now, what is the purpose of me narrating these? Now, these stories are all mentioned in the books, by the way. Astaghfirullah, I'm not bringing anything new. And these are stories, frankly, most of you have never heard, at least about Hassan and whatnot. Why? Because it is our culture and custom to just cover up. And a lot of it is good. We should cover up. But this narration is found in authentic books of hadith, in the books of seerah and whatnot. Now, by the way, some modern authors have tried to reinterpret and say, no, this is not true, and Hassan couldn't have been like this. But honestly, their arguments are emotional. Like, how could he have been like this? I mean, all the books mention it. It's not Ibn Ishaq mentions it. Muslim Imam Ahmad has the riwayah of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. He's the one let's just be.
If he'd done something like that, there would be.
Let's have Q&A at the end, Yakhi. One of the problems is if you interrupt, then everything gets stopped. Let's have Q&A at the end. The fact that there's no shi'r against him doesn't mean anything, by the way. That doesn't mean anything. Because his criticism of the other tribes is about their pedigree and their lineage. To respond, they need to criticize the pedigree or lineage of the tribe, of the Muslims or whatnot, right? As for personal faults or flaws of Hassan's, this is really irrelevant. He is smearing the entire qabila, right? And the fact that there's no poetry, awwalan, doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It simply means the books of seerah didn't need to mention it. As it is, the books of seerah mention Islamic poetry more than they mention the opponent's poetry, as it is. Obviously, we have a bias to preserve our poetry. Why should we preserve what the Quraysh said about us? Frankly, what the Quraysh said about the Prophet has not been preserved either, right? By and large. Exactly, it is, but that doesn't. But the Quraysh's poetry against the Prophet did not reach us, by the way. The much of which Hassan responded to did not reach us. In other words, what Hassan is responding to did not reach us. My point being, this is an emotional argument. It's an emotional argument that cannot withstand the explicit texts that are pretty explicit in this point. Now, my point is as follows. And you hear, for example, this is the exact argument that is used.
I was going to say history is written by the winners, and in a way, anything that was said is lost to history because Muhammad wasn't killed. The forces weren't wiped out. So, Jackson's chewing on a bone, sorry. Rawhide. So, what was said against him is, who cares? That's lost to history because the history is written by the winners. That's pretty much what it comes down to. I said it, I say it again.
One of the arguments used, but this is all modern, you don't find this in medieval textbooks, that Hassan couldn't have been like this because it's not appropriate, because there's no poetry against him. Okay, that's an argument. Let me just say, what is my purpose in quoting these things? Astaghfirullah, is it to make fun of a Sahabi? A'udhu billah. Making fun of a Sahabi is a sin. A'udhu billah. Right? Radiyallahu anhu. My purpose is actually very, very significant. It is as follows. Hassan ibn Thabit, the fact of the matter is, radiyallahu anhu, there are some, negatives on his resume as well. This is one of them. We just discussed another one last week. Have we forgotten last week? Right? What happened with him there? Frankly, that is worse than this issue, because this is a issue beyond his control. Some people are created this way, right? Some people are like this. And as I said, generally speaking, artists by and large, they have this type of mentality. It's not something, what happened last week, which is in Bukhari and whatnot, that's much worse than this issue. Now, why am I mentioning all of this? Well, a number of reasons. Firstly, to demonstrate really the humanity of our tradition, of the Sahaba. We have a tendency to make them superhuman. Now, the problem with that is then we can no longer relate to them. This is
All right, I just went back 5 seconds. We're going to go ahead and stop it there, and we'll be back with part 3, but I won't be doing it tonight. I know. It's okay. But it's 7:10 and I want to relax a little bit. So, we're going to end it here. I know. I'll be back. Don't you worry. But until then, we'll be back with part 3. So right now, I want you to have a good day. Have a good night.